We are doing advanced Canopy training today. What this training is going to go over is different configurations or configuration settings that you would run into when updating your Canopy environment for your organization. We are not going over the basics. So we're not going over menu item creation. This is more tips and tricks of the trade, as well as giving you guys a overview of the advanced settings that you will find in Canopy. So I'm going to go ahead and authenticate in. For a show of hands, this is whose first time is it with Canopy? If this is your first time ever seeing Canopy, please raise your hand. Good. Do I have any Canopy veterans on here? I think I see one that I know for a fact knows more about Canopy than I do, but is anybody else a Canopy veteran? Go ahead and raise your hand. Okay. All right. So now that we're in Canopy, the first thing I want to call to attention is the top of my screen. Oh, I see somebody in. Okay. Is anybody else having a hard time hearing me? Anybody else having a hard time hearing me? Is this better? Okay, raise your hand if you can hear me. All right, perfect. Okay. So with Canopy, the top left-hand side of the screen is going to be your organization and your venue. So it is expected to see your organization name twice. So for example is listed twice. Your venue is going to be on the right-hand side. So if you've gotten multiple venues with your account, maybe you're a college property and you've got a football stadium and a basketball arena and a baseball arena and a soccer stadium, you would see them listed here. The reason why I'm calling attention to this is because when you go into your F&B locations, and even with merchandise too, when you go into your settings, you're going to see organization settings and venue settings. Think of this as a tree. The organization is the base of your tree. The venue settings, although part of the tree, is a larger branch of that tree. And then your menus serve as smaller branches from that venue branch. When you are updating settings in Canopy, you want to think big picture and small picture. So if I were to update the organization settings, for example, in this location, I am updating the settings across all of the venues associated with the organization. So if you are a merchandise customer or a food service customer, maybe you've got multiple events going on at multiple venues. I know I've got some customers that do merchandise with us and they'll have 5 different shows going on at the same time in 5 different states. For food service, maybe you've got a football game going on and also a soccer game going on at the same time. Even though they're built out as different venues, if I update the organization settings and I were to turn off ordering on an organization level, I'm turning off ordering for the entire organization. So thinking about that tree, if I decide that I'm going to turn off ordering, it's going to affect all of my branches and all of my limbs. So when you're making a change to the organization settings, keep in mind that this is a big picture change. You're basically saying, yes, I want this change to apply to every aspect of my property and all of the sub properties associated with it. The reason why I call attention to this is because if I were to turn off express pickup for all locations and I was food service, right now I'm also turning off express pickup for merchandise. Same thing with you guys. If you turn off express pickup for all of your locations and you've got food service enabled, you're turning off express pickup for your food service providers. So when you're looking at your settings in Canopy, keep in mind that organization is big picture. Now we do have ways to limit the access, so you don't have to worry about a supervisor going in and, you know, ruining everybody's day. You can remove access from people to update on an organization level, but if you are an org admin or a site expert, keep in mind that these changes are big changes. So the same thing applies for your settings. You are going to see these same settings across Canopy 4 different times. The first time being an organization. The second time, if I click into my venue settings, let me get it to go. This is my fault. Perks of having a new computer. If you go into your venue settings, look what looks familiar. The same exact settings. They also live in your location settings and your menu settings. You can get as specific with your updates and changes as you want. So if you've got express pickup and you want express pickup to do something completely different than in-seat delivery for the same stand, you can set that up. Your venue settings are only going to affect your venue. So if I updated the settings here, it would affect example and example load or lodge. If I were to go into my venue settings, it's only going to affect example. Example lodge will stay exactly how example lodge has been set up. I'm going to go and walk you guys through each setting here, and I'm also going to show you where you can apply it in a location and a menu situation. But keep in mind that this is copy pasted 4 times in Canopy. So the behavior and these permissions that you're seeing right here, right now, is exactly what you're going to see when we go into these menus and locations. So nothing is going to change from a settings perspective. The first setting I want to call attention to is going to be in the POS expedite section. With a show of hands, who uses expedite at their property currently? Is anybody familiar with expedite or currently using it? Okay, perfect. So this is going to control how expedite behaves. There is a lot of information in this section. We have specific articles in our knowledge base that I will send after this training, but the number one things that could break or change how your expedite order flow behaves are going to be your auto process expedite orders. Auto process expedite orders is going to be how you receive your orders. Do you want your orders to automatically process and go straight into processing, which is going to be being prepared? Or do you want to manually use them? Or I'm sorry, manually move them. So when you're looking at that order flow with expedite, and I'm going to connect my tablet here in just a moment. When you are looking at the order flow, how do you want your orders to come in? Do you want them to start their life in the place tab and then you move them to being prepared? Or do you want them to go straight to being prepared and skip that initial step of the place tab? This is going to be how you can set that standard. Anybody doing a point of sale integration? And if you don't know what a point of sale integration is, then you're probably not doing it. So like Quest, Micros. Okay, perfect. If anybody was, they would need to have this turn on so we could process it through. And basically it kind of bridges that gap between the 2 revenue centers, or not revenue centers, the 2 point of sales, VenueNext and Micros, or VenueNext and Quest. All of this information, to be very honest, is related to point of sale integration. So if you are using us as point of sale, which I know I see definitely one point of sale customer on this call right now, this does not apply to any kind of settings that you guys really want to deal with. The max order amount in dollars, this is just gonna how you set your standard. So if you're a suites property and you know that you're gonna be getting $1,000 orders, then you might wanna up that to $1,000 or $2,000. This just sets a standard. But if you don't anticipate somebody placing a $500 concessions order, you don't need to update this. The rest of this, do not worry about updating it. This is specific to integrations. Skip POS submission. You always want this to say yes, no matter what. This is based off of integrations, but it also plays a role in the menu in the menu submission process too. So always make sure that this says yes. If you're noticing that your order is not completely it goes to place, but it's not fully moving the way it's supposed to, maybe there's like a delay, make sure that that's enabled. Skip POS submission state. This is going to apply to everybody from a settings perspective. This is how you determine how your orders come in. I also cannot stress enough the importance of testing when you update the submission state. And when I say testing, end-to-end testing. Go through the entire order flow, including checking your reports. Skip POS submission state, and I do have an article where we review what each state does, is how you can tell your orders to process. So right now, the skip POS submission state for the entire venue of example is processing. That means they are queuing all of their orders to go straight to the being prepared tab. So if I place an order right now on this website, I am going to have it go straight into the being prepared tab in Canopy, and I'll show you that in a second. Because we are in the venue settings, this is the venue-wide setting. So if I were to update this setting, so maybe I decide, you know what, I want all of my mobile ordering to go to completed, which is straight to settlement. This will override every single setting that all of these menus have, including merchandise. So when you're making these updates, do it on a menu level versus the venue level, unless you know for a fact, or you're in the building process where you haven't gone live. But if your partner and you both agree you want everything to go to being prepared, sure, update it to processing as long as you guys have already had that communication. If you're doing merchandise and food service. However, food service, if you guys are trying to update, maybe you introduced mobile ordering, maybe you've got point of sale already, and now you're introducing mobile ordering and you don't want to go in and manually update the menus. If I were to move all this to processing, it's going to overwrite all of my work that I've done on point of sale. So this is a big picture update when you do it on a venue level. Now, if I were to update this to completed, everything, like I said, would be updated. So if I go to my F&B locations, all of the menus that are going to populate here will now go straight to processing. It doesn't matter what I've set up previously. Because even though I set it up on a menu level, any kind of big picture change on a large level will overwrite the menu level. So think of it, even though the organization level controls everything, you can override what the organization level settings are in the menu. But if I were to re-establish that setting again, so maybe I say, okay, I want everything to go to processing, or instead of completed, even though I've set this up to be completed, it's going to override that setting. So you always want to do your setting updates for small picture changes in the actual location. And we're going to go back into that same section, but I want to show you the different states that you guys can look at. So chicken and brews is what I have pulled up. If you notice, I put a pepperoni pizza in my cart just a few minutes ago. I'm going to go ahead and update the settings and go in there in just one quick second. I'm pulling up my Expedite tablet so you guys can see what we're going to be doing. So in chicken and brews, to access the settings that we were just in, so like I said, you see settings 4 times. Org, venue. And if you go to your F&B location, you see it on a macro level in the location and a micro level in the menu. So service type is going to be how you access your settings. So if I go to Chicken and Brews and I click on Express Pickup, our friend Mr. Settings at the top is going to give me my macro ability to adjust for the entire location. But if you notice, if I were to update something here and I'll save it, it's not going to reflect here because it's only specific to the menu. So let me pull up my menu. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up my Expedite tablet. Give me one quick second. Takes it a second. Okay, so as you can see, I have the Chicken and Brews Expedite tablet pulled up. I've got my Place tab, my Being Prepared tab, my Ready tab, and my Close tab. Placed is going to be an order is sent in. If we have it placed, it'll end. If we have it configured to be placed, it'll end up here. Right now, Being Prepared is the equivalent to processing. To update the POS submission state, so maybe I want all of my orders to go to queued. I'm going to go to queue. I'm going to type in the words queued. And I'm going to actually disable auto processing my expedite orders, because when I auto process my expedite orders, if I kept this setting on true, it would start its life in the queued tab, but within 20 seconds, it'll move to Being Prepared. This is also a setting that you want to have for order throttling. So if I decide that I want to use order throttling or order ahead hours, I want my orders to go have the skip POS submission state as queued, and I don't want them to auto process because it's going to have all of the orders sit in queued. And then what we're doing with order ahead is it's processing that order and moving it to Being Prepared when it hits that threshold or that window that it can be prepared at. But for right now, if you want your orders to go straight to the Place tab, if I update this for Chicken and Brews, I'm gonna have to say goodbye to my slice of pepperoni pizza because I have to refresh to make sure my changes go through. If I place my test order and I go to order now, let me get this back to. All right, this should go. Give me one more second. Okay, this is because I don't have a payment attached and I did not disable authorization. So give me one more second to get you into a different example. But if I go to queued and I place an order, it's going to go straight to the Place tab on my iPad, and you'll see that just in one moment. So settings are here. I'm doing this for the entire location if I want to enable it. But if you notice, if I update something for an entire location, if I've got a point of sale on a kiosk, it's going to affect that too. It's going to bleed down. So like I said, big picture location setting. If you're trying to do it in a small picture location setting, so maybe you just want it for mobile for concessions and delivery. If I do concessions and I go to menus, then I can go to settings and do the same thing. So there's that option again, all of the items that you see in Venue and org. So if I go to POS expedite and I change this to queued and I disable the auto process, watch what happens when I place an order in that location. So I'm going to go to fan zone. I'm going to place an order for a hot dog. It's showing me it's in a queued state. I'm going to show you guys how to update that. But when you look at my iPad, notice that there's a 1 in the placed. There's my test order with my hot dog. So if you want your orders to go straight to placed, this is going to be the setting that you update it to. You want it to say queued. Queued equals placed. If I want this to go to being prepared, I'm going to do processing. Now notice what happens if I add an added space. So I added an additional space to my G. I'm updating it. And this is why we stress the importance of testing end to end whenever you make any adjustments. Because like I said, we had that added space bar in the configuration. You still see it here. My order's not going through. I'm getting an infinite spinner. The settings are extremely sensitive. This is going to spin like this until I adjust it. So if you ever have an issue where a customer sees a behavior like this, but if you go to Canopy, you see my order right here in an incomplete state. There's a settings misconfiguration, and that's why it's important when you're in there. I'm going to go back to FME locations, and I'm going to fix my mistake. When you're in there, you want to make sure you're not doing any added spaces. So that's why we suggest end-to-end testing when you're updating things. And we also suggest reviewing our documents before updating as well. So processing lowercase, no additional spaces is going to help have all of your orders go to being prepared. It's still trying to figure out what kind of home it wants to go to. I'm going to refresh it. If I place this again, now it's going to order received. And now on my tablet, it's in being prepared. The reason why you see one enclosed is because that's the one that I just canceled, that we had the infinite spinner. Another state you can do, and I recommend this for point of sale. So is anybody a point of sale? Well, I know I've got one point of sale customer on, but is anybody, when they do their orders, they just want the order straight to go to close? You don't want to go through the expedite fulfillment. You don't have interest in it. You want someone to place the order and you want to collect payment right then and there. No bells and whistles. Okay. So when you're doing that, if you do this on a macro level, like in the actual location, and if I update this to go to completed, every single order that is placed in this revenue center will go straight to completed. If you want it specifically for point of sale and kiosk, but you want to go through the fulfillment flow for mobile like we just did, then you're going to want to pick POS from the dropdown, menus, settings. From here, back to our friend POS expedite. And instead of processing, you want completed. Completed is going to be how you get the transaction to be started by the cashier and completed by the cashier in that one go. You don't want the fluff in between. You want belly up, point of sale service. Completed is going to be the skip POS submission state. You don't have to worry about any of these settings when you go straight to completed because you're not going through the fulfillment flow. So if I go in and I update it here and I go into my example point of sale, it's going to have me register, maybe. Nope, perfect. I've already registered before. When I go into my example point of sale, I'm just going to change my configuration. I'm just logging in. If I place an order, and I go to cash, once I pay, my order's gone through, but nothing is showing on my POS. I'm sorry, my expedite tablet. Because I went end to end. Now there is a way you can have the order show. So maybe you guys want to do expedite and you want the fulfillment flow because you want the team to be able to create the items. I could have this go straight to processing. I'm gonna refresh and sync for sport. Now I'm checking out my order. This would go straight to the iPad. And I'll show you what it looks like in your orders. Notice right here, order received in the location. Your team would then go through and fulfill it. I don't have a way to demo this on my current iPad because we have the settings for this example environment to omit point of sale, but you would see this order and being prepared, and then you would be able to go through and do the fulfillment process. It would then also print out a receipt. If you want your settings to do that, we would need to do that on the back end. That's more of a hard setting than a Canopy setting to have the order go to the iPad or be omitted from the iPad, but go through the fulfillment process. But I'm gonna go back into my point of sale. Point of sale. And I'm just gonna update this really fast to go back to completed, so that way I don't ruin somebody else's day. So that's going to be how you update the dates and the settings. So if you ever need to manipulate how you guys are processing your orders, maybe you guys want to do the fulfillment flow, maybe you don't. That's going to be the first step that you guys take, is setting it up. Like I said, all this option or these options are all copy pasted across all of the environments. The next thing I want to show you is order cards. So say that your fan zone sports bar is located, and I'm going to go back to my settings. It's located between section 102 and 103. And you want to call attention to your customers that place an order, whether it's a kiosk order, point of sale order, in-seat delivery order, quick pay order. You want them to know exactly where the stand's located. If you scroll all the way down to order cards, your order cards are going to be where you can set the messaging. So if you are using that place tab, there's our friend, the word queued. You'll see the similarities between the display name and the name that we refer it to in the skips POS submission state. Queued equals placed. So if you're using that queued tab, you could say, hey, your order or placed or order received, whichever, your order has been placed. This submitted, this is for POS integration. Unless you have an integration with us, you will never see that. So my point of sale customer, you will never see this. You can update it for sport, but you're not going to see this on your fulfillment flow. I'm just bypassing submitted and submitting. Processing, there's processing again. That goes to the being prepared tab. So you could say being prepared or order received. And here you could say the message, your order's being prepared, whatever you want to tell the customer. You could even say your order's being prepared, start making your way to section 102 and 103. You can also use the customer name. You can also reference the customer order number. However, in these, notice my order number's up here. It'll also tell the location name. So you want to make sure that you're not being redundant in your messaging too. So always check. So it says your order's being prepared. Your order's being prepared. So double check the messaging. What we do have it with these, this is hard coded. This is hard coded. The second line, please pick up at. This is editable text. So this is where you would put the call to action. Hey, go to section 102 and 103. Say your order is moved to ready. Bumped, and this is a setting we didn't go through. We don't necessarily recommend using bumped as a skip POS submission state. This would have the order automatically go to ready, but by doing that, you lose text messaging capabilities. So if you wanted to text your customers that their order was ready, but you had the order go straight to ready, they're not going to get that text message. The only thing that they're going to get is this notification. So all the notifications that you see on your customer receipts on their phones and an email copy of the receipt. But the added messaging that you get by having the order go to that ready state will not be sent. But bumped is the equivalent to ready. So that's the ready tab that you see in Expedite, and I'll reference that right here. This tab, the ready tab, is the equivalent to bumped. If your customer puts in their phone number and you put the order into ready, they get a text message. And I'll show you how to update those text messages next. So here is going to also be where you want to put some information for your customers. So raise your hand if you have, or maybe you currently are, you have interest in using pickup window capabilities. So you want to have, you want to start queuing your customers to go to a certain pickup window to pick up a mobile order, or really an order. If you wanted to use pickup windows, you could have the customer show that their order is ready, and you could say your order is ready, proceed to window A to pick up your order. Proceed to window B to pick up your order. You can do that call to action in that your order is ready messaging, and it would reflect here and also in your text message, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Assigned, this is if you guys are using the runner app for in-seat delivery, this would just let your customer know that, hey, your order's been assigned to a runner. So similar if you order a pizza, if I ever, or I guess when I do, if I do order Domino's pizza, they'll say, Mark is on his way with your pizza. We're not going to tell you who's running your pizza, but this is going to be how the customer knows that it's been assigned to a runner and it's on its way. Completion pending, you don't have to worry about updating. This primarily is more full service point of sale, but they would never be queued on this. Completed, this is going to be the message that your customer gets when your order is closed. So if I move my order, I'm just going to go through the states. The notification is pretty instantaneous when you are closing orders. So I'm moving the states right now for my current order. It'll update within 30 seconds on the new state that it's in. But when I close my order, it'll tell me that my order's been completed. And that's going to be this message here, completed. So my order is in a completed state. By it being a completed state, I have collected my payment. When it's in a completed state, you could put a message, hey, your order's been completed, enjoy, or hey, your order's been completed. Let us know if we can be of further assistance, or if you have an issue, or however, whatever call to action you want to do for that. Refunded, maybe the order needs to be refunded. So if I were to go into my order, and I'm just going to refund it really fast on my iPad, it's going to take me a minute to refund it. But when I do remove or refund my items, actually I can't refund from this iPad right now. But when I refund from my items, it'll show refunded and it'll show me my new zeroed out total. So if I go in Canopy right now and refund myself, first of all, to refund an order, this is saying void because I have authorizations disabled. This is a test environment, which is why you don't see payment transaction history. To refund an order, if you select refund, and I'll show you an example of this. I think yours is going to be voided too. Yeah. So to refund an order, and I'm not going to refund an actual live order. When you go into your F&B order section, if you do start refund, you can check each individual item that you want refunded, or you can do the whole item or whole order. Because we're not refunding, we're not going to do that. Once you're done, you just do issue refund. A lot of people will do this and then scroll all the way down here and hit update. If you don't see the words issue refund, you're going to get an error message. So when you're refunding, that is a common issue you run into, issue refund. I'm going to go back to example. Because I don't have an authorization on here, I can't refund it, but it would show refunded if I did. And then the total would be zeroed out. Back to F&B locations. So now that we've looked at big picture or settings, small picture settings, and order cards, I'm going to go back to my F&B locations. I'm going to go back into my service type. The next thing I want to point out is text messages. So if you go to, you can either do your settings for the menu by choosing the menu from the dropdown and selecting settings, and this will be your menu settings, or you can do your location settings. All of the settings are the same. If you want to update the text message that your customer gets, so maybe you have a text message that you want to send. Push messages are now text messages. I know it can be deceiving. So there's bumped again, bumped state push message. This is your ready state text message. So when your order is ready, this is what it's going to say. In this case, because I was just recently in delivery, it's showing delivery, you can update this for the entire menu and it'll override your delivery verbiage from your express verbiage if you're not using the runner app. So if you're using the runner app, you're going to want to put your order is out for delivery for text messages for delivery. If you're not using the runner app, you want to make sure that your bumped state push text message is in line with both express pickup and in-seat delivery. Because if you have two menu types like what I have here, I've got express pickup. So if I go back to my cart, so if I go into my fan zone, even though in-seat delivery is turned off, I can toggle between the two menu types. If I have both enabled, so in-seat or delivery, I'm going to get the same message if I'm not using the runner app. So you want this to be uniform. You can say, you can use the customer name in their text message. So you could say, Jacqueline, your order is being prepared, or I'm sorry, is being delivered. Or you could say, Jacqueline, your order is ready. Please make your way to, and then you can use the location name. There is a document we'll send you with the call to action on what you can and can't use. You can also tell the customer in their text message what window to use. For the runner app, this would say, Jacqueline, your order is on its way, or it's out for delivery. Once again, if you're not using that runner app, then you're going to want to make sure that this messaging is uniformed if you're going to be doing it for the entire location. You could go into your service types and I can have a delivery specific message that gets sent out. And I can also do an express pickup specific message by going to push messages. And you'll notice that this is the same as that. Your enrollment message is always going to be sent for anybody that enrolls in texting. So if I were to place an order and I put my phone number in, I'm going to get this enrollment message. Some of our customers like to put in customer name. They also like to put in a promotion like, hey, use promo code Coke to get 50% off of Coca-Cola products on your next order or something along those lines. You can use that. Try to keep your text messages short and sweet. If an order is canceled, you'll also get a text message that your order's been canceled. But this is going to be where you can update this information for each location as well as menu. Keep in mind that if you update this on a venue level and you've got merchandise or food service that are working hand in hand together, that this is going to be the message that is sent to all of the customers, whether you are a merchandise customer or a food service customer. So merchandise, I advise updating your texting in your locations. If you are at a location that has both food service and merchandise enabled. Just because I've learned that merchandise normally has a smaller number of locations than food service, and it also helps prevent your texting from being changed. Food service, if you are at a property where you don't have merchandise enabled, you can update it on a venue level if you want it to be uniform across all of the locations. You can do a call to action that will tell you the specific location name, so you don't have to go in and update each individual text message to say the location name. We have a way to do it where it'll auto-populate it for you. The last thing I'm going to show you guys is tax. Tax is a huge one. With tax, you can update your tax settings on a venue level or an organization level. Keep in mind that if you have multiple venues across different states, you're going to want to update tax by venue. But if everybody's in the same state and your tax settings are the same across the board, you can do it on an org level. So with tax, raise your hand if you guys have multiple tax rates. So maybe you've got a tax rate for beverage and you've got a tax rate for food and a tax rate for alcohol. Oh, that's a first. So if you have a singular tax rate, so when I say singular tax rate, it's 10% tax across the board, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's food, alcohol, doesn't matter. Then you can update it in decimal format. Notice this is decimal format here in the venue tax settings. That means across the entire venue, you are charging 10.25% tax on everything. If you have multiple tax rates, you're going to go to your global F&B items and you're going to plug in the decimal format of your tax rates here. So if all of your food is 6.5% tax and your alcohol is 15% tax on your food items, so say, well, gum, I guess kind of counts as food. I don't really know. So say gum is 6.5% tax. I'm doing 0.065 for 6.5%. But if my beer is 10%, I'm doing 0.10. You will need to put the tax rate on each item if you've got multiple tax rates. If you have a PIF tax, and if you don't know what a PIF tax is, you are the luckiest person I've ever met. If you have a tax that's additional based on the item, so we've got a customer out in Utah where if it's a packaged good, so these M&Ms, there's an additional 4% tax. So if your base tax rate is 6.5% tax, but you have an additional 4% tax, you're going to want to do 10.5% tax. There's not a way that we can back that 4% out, but that's going to be how you can collect all of the tax on that packaged item that has that tax. So instead of the 6.5%, you're going to add the additional 4.5. So that's going to be 0.105. 10.5. After you update those tax settings, you're going to hit save. Oops, sorry about that, guys. If you happen to put or have a manager or somebody on your team puts in the tax rates on the items, so maybe you have a flat tax of 10%. If you put 10% tax here and 10% tax here, it'll work as expected. If you put 10% tax here and 5% tax here, it's going to cause confusion on the back end. It's going to honor the 10% tax, but it's not going to override it for the 5%. So if you're trying to say, okay, temporarily chips are 5% tax, but everything else is 10%, you're going to have to update the menu items for it to properly reflect. Otherwise, it's going to continue to charge that 10%, and it's also going to cause a little bit of confusion on the reporting side, because it's like listening to mom and dad have an argument. You don't know what side you want to take, and you don't know what the best move is, and that's kind of what happens on our side. Even though if you think about how we do our global settings, where the menu setting can override the organization setting to a degree, unless overwritten again, here it's going to honor the tax rate that's in the venue, even if you try to override it in the global item itself. So you want to make sure that your global items, if you have to do an individual tax rate, are all properly reflected, and you change the setting. So in venue settings here, and you remove that singular tax rate. So you can take that unique tax rate that you need to update to. You also want to make sure that you're setting. So in these tax settings, tax by item, this is going to be that I'm taking this tax rate and I'm taxing each item the same rate. Tax rate on items means that my tax rates on my items and I need to use them. So you can have both of these enabled in many scenarios where maybe merchandise does an 8% tax across the board, but food service has 3 or 4 different tax rates. You're basically saying, yes, this is what I want to use. Or yes, this is what's filled in, but you want to make sure that the information is consistent. So from a merchandise perspective, you don't want to see 2 tax rates input on your items because that's going to be what causes the issue. Oops, that was my fault. That's what happens when you hit your back button way too many times. Okay, so now that we've gone through our tax settings, the last thing that is important to collecting tax is when you go into your menu, and we do have some enhancements that we're currently vetting out to see how we can best handle these for future. However, in the meantime, when you're adding tax to an item, now we've set our tax rates, whether on a global item or a venue level item. Now we want to dictate what item gets taxed. You have to do that on a menu level. So notice Fan Zone Sports Bar shows 3 times because I have 4 different menus. Each menu's tax needs to be configured. So an express pickup. I want to make sure all of the items that are going to be add-on tax have the add-on tax box checked. If you're doing a tax inclusive, then you would check the tax inclusive box if you want us to break this out for you in reporting. So if you do 10.5% inclusive tax, so you're breaking that out, instead of doing the formula, you can actually have it tax inclusive and we'll do that formula for you in our data now. If you want to have somebody manually do it, you can leave these left blank. But if you want the customer to be prompted to add on tax, you do need to check these boxes. I do understand that it's extremely cumbersome and there could be the opportunity for human error, which is why we are vetting out different enhancement ideas on tax. But in the meantime, this is going to be how you can ensure tax is being applied to your items. Because there's so many different tax rules across all of our states. Some people, they do water is not taxable and tax inclusive, but certain food items are. Other states I've seen just interesting tax rules and also different tax settings based off of premium versus concessions, which is why we drilled it down so specific. But I can also see from an operator's perspective, going in and toggling between menus and clicking 200 plus items times 50 menus can be a lot. This is going to be the best way to do add-on tax. So we've covered tax, we've covered order cards, we've covered push notifications, order states. Another thing I'm going to point out is inventory. You can control your inventory on a menu level, and you can also do it. I'm going to go back to global at a location level here. So if I go to my location settings, if I have 50 hot dogs that I'm going to sell at my Fan Zone Sports Bar, I can actually set up 50 hot dogs here, and I can do a countdown. So every time an order gets sent to processing, if I place an order for a hot dog, it goes to being prepared, it'll automatically decrease it to 49. The threshold is going to be when I turn it off. For food service, I recommend giving yourself, depending on your stand size and the quantity of your inventory, at least a 10 item buffer. If you're only at 50 items, you obviously don't want to do 10 as your buffer for your threshold. You can do less, but the threshold basically, if I got down to, say my threshold was 5. If I sold 45 hot dogs, when I get to my 45th hot dog, the item turns off and is no longer available for sale on mobile ordering. It does not cancel existing orders. It only prevents customers from overextending the inventory. The reason why we're not doing a threshold of 1 or 0 is because you never know when someone's going to drop a hot dog or you're going to run into production issues. So you give yourself that buffer. So if you have it set for 50 hot dogs and you want it to turn off on the 50th hot dog, but you drop 5 hot dogs, well, you've technically overextended yourself by 5 hot dogs if you haven't replaced them. So that's why we recommend a higher threshold. You can also control how much of an item a person can get. So we have a customer that does $1 hot dogs, but they control how many a customer can put in a cart or in an order by doing the max item count and the minimum item count. If you leave this at 0, it's going to break ordering. So you want to make sure that this never is left at 0. So if I'm doing $1 hot dogs and I only want my customers to order 1 or 5 hot dogs per order, I could do a max item count as 5. If I save it, I won't be able to add more than 5 hot dogs to my cart in that location. When you put in any kind of inventory and it sells out, if you turn it back on, it's gonna continue to honor the inventory that you have set, because it's until you update the inventory or remove it, it's gonna try to prevent you from overextending yourself with product. You can also do it at a venue level, but it's at your discretion. If you've got 1,000 hot dogs spread out across 20 concession stands, you don't have the ability to turn off that hot dog or have it auto turn off if you've got a stand that has 100 of the hot dogs and a stand that has 500. It's only going to acknowledge the big picture number and not the specific number. So you still run that risk of overextending yourself in a different way. So even though you might still have 100 hot dogs left in the building, if all those hot dogs are on Promenade and Terrace is completely sold out, but they're still taking orders, then it doesn't necessarily benefit. If you've got inventory specific questions, I'm happy to set up time to talk through that further as well. Same thing with anything about Canopy or anything that we've reviewed. If you've got property specific questions or you kind of want to talk through functionalities, if you shoot us a note at help@VenueNext.com or you reach out to your account manager, we can set up further time to talk through logistics for any of your property specific questions. If there's a functionality that you did not see on this training that you were expecting to see as well, we can definitely set up time to talk through that for you as well. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this training. We do have 4 minutes left. So in that 4 minutes, if anybody